Hello and welcome to the Warcraft Academy guide to Thok Heroic. For this guide I'll assume you already know how the fight works on normal. If you don't, click at the top to view the normal mode guide. You'll want to use 2 tanks and 7 healers for this fight on 25 man and 2 tanks and 3 healers for 10 man. Other than 1 or 2 minor additional mechanics, the main difference to Thok on Heroic is his massively increased health. As a result of this, you'll have to take a lot more stacks of Deafening Roar in the stack phase before you transition him, otherwise you'll just never kill him in time. To start with, you're going to want very exact positioning. We have raid markers on each side showing the exact spot that our ranged and melee stand on. These spots need to be very precise since they're perfectly safe from the charging Yeti, which I'll talk about a bit later. You're going to be taking a lot more stacks of Deafening Screech, anywhere between 22 or 29 depending on your raid composition and the strength of your DPS. The idea is to keep him in the stack phase longer to allow you to get more damage in to help you beat his enrage timer. You can't go above 30 stacks though, or the Screeches start to one-shot your raid. The number of stacks you take will depend on the cooldowns you have available. 25-man guilds should be looking to take 26 to 29 stacks, and 10-man guilds should be looking to take 21 to 26 stacks. Start with your melee in one group and your ranged in the other. Each group needs to have an even split with no more than 14 in 25-man and no more than 4 in 10-man. This means Thok will not be able to push into the Kite Phase until you want him to, because there are not enough people close together. This does also mean though that if you don't heal properly, you will die before he transitions. Ground effects such as Healing Rain and Efflorescence should reach both groups if positioned properly. Short range cooldowns like Smoke Bomb and Spirit Link Totem will need to be placed in between the two groups in order to reach both, but be careful to do this in between a roar so you don't push him over by mistake when you move. Now, I can't tell you exactly what cooldowns to use and when, but here are a few examples of how you should think about using them. Consider what cooldowns you have available. Paladin cooldowns in particular are very good here. Devotion auras reduce the damage you take, and whilst Devotion aura is up, your casters can freely cast without being interrupted. This is going to be very important for healers. Likewise, they can also use Hand of Protection on one of your healers, which gives that healer 10 seconds of uninterrupted free casting. They can use this time to channel heals like Divine Hymn or Tranquility. Your casters should be tracking these effects with a weak aura and free casting whilst they're up. Try to plan your Devo auras and Hand of Protections out so that they aren't used at the same time, but it can be a good idea to overlap the edges a bit so your healer can free cast completely without interruption. A default suggestion is to use personals around 7 stacks and start chaining your other cooldowns from then onwards, so that your raid always has something going, whether that's a damage reduction or a healing throughput cooldown. If you have a barrier, this should be one of the last cooldowns you use. Around 3 or 4 stacks before you want him to push over, you can stack both groups together and use the barrier and then simply keep healing for as long as you're able. You'll most likely push into the Kite Phase as soon as the barrier expires, as long as people are properly stacked. The other thing you need to consider is the cooldown timers. Most raid cooldowns have a 3-minute cooldown, which is just above the duration of most stack and Kite phases. If you end your Kite Phase too early, they won't be up in time for the next phase. One viable strategy is to push him to really high stacks on the first stack phase, but only to around 11 or 12 on the second. This gives your cooldowns time to come back up fully for the third, and is definitely a safer way to do it, but it does require slightly better DPS overall. For most guilds, this may be a more reliable way to do the encounter. So push him to as many stacks as you can handle, stack up together shortly before you want him to transition or when you want to use barrier. As soon as he transitions, back away from him for safety to the opposite side. Have your tank pick up the jailer here. The first kite needs to run directly towards the entrance and needs to react quickly enough so that Thok never passes through the raid here. Thok is always moving in a straight line on the side of the room that your raid is not on, backwards and forth. Your ranged DPS should be following Thok as he runs after people so they can get extra damage on him, whilst your tanks and melee handle the jailer. Thok generally prefers to fixate on people further away from him, so most of the time he'll be fixating on the people in the melee camp if the ranged are chasing after him DPSing him. Once he gets high stacks of movement speed, you'll need to start helping the person out with movement speed increases. Stampeding Roars, Priest Feathers and Warlock Gateways are a few examples. You can take 12 to 13 stacks without Warlock Gateways, but you will most likely need them if you take any more. You should open the cage 2 to 3 stacks before you want him to transition. Once he transitions, your raid stacks on the markers on the left side of the room here, and your tank positions Thok like so. He can face the boss in either direction as long as melee are by his feet so they can hit him from behind. Your cooldowns most likely will be up a few seconds later this stack phase than they were in the previous one, depending on how long you kited him for. At around his second screech, a group of captive cave bats will fly down and start attacking your raid. These need to be picked up by whichever tank is not currently tanking an AoE down. Your tank is unlikely to drop below 50%, so we should be safe to tank the bats in the melee group to allow them to AoE. These bats need to be fully focused and AoE'd by all DPS. They do quite a bit of extra raid damage whilst alive, and combined with the roar can really kill people easily. Ideally, they should be dead by the time the boss reaches 10 stacks, and you should be using your second potions and any raid cooldowns you have available still to cover the bats. If you have any cooldowns you did not use on the first stack phase or don't need to use on the first stack phase, it's a very good idea to use them shortly after the bats land and keep them up until they're dead. Once the bats are dead, if you have no cooldown remaining, you can either stack up again immediately and push to the next kite phase, or if you have cooldowns up, especially if you're 25 man, you can continue on in the stack phase for as long as is safe. Either method is viable. In this stack phase and the kite phase that follows, your healers will need to be doing a lot of dispelling. Your raid members will be constantly affected by a dispellable dot which can stack and does a lot of damage if left undispelled. Once the kite phase starts, move away from the boss again to the other side, ready to deal with the next jailer, and repeat the kite phase as normal. You'll need to ensure you have healers in range of everyone, including the person doing the kiting, to ensure that everyone continues to get dispelled. You can use health stones in this phase if needed. Once you're ready, transition him into the third stack phase on the right side of the room. In this stack phase, most of your cooldowns should be available again as you need them. You'll need to free people from ice tombs if they get trapped, and you'll also need to watch out for the starved yeti. This is a mob that charges from one side of the room to the other periodically, doing very high damage to anyone it passes through. It creates a red marker at the point it's going to charge to, so it's very easy to avoid. In your default stack location, as long as you stack perfectly, he'll never pass through the raid, so you only really need to watch out for him after the kite phase. You can either kill or ignore this yeti, it's up to you and how easy you find it to avoid. DPS through this phase and push it into the third kite phase when you're ready. Keep looking out for the yeti, especially during the kite phase. In this kite phase you have a decision to make. If the boss is at 12% or lower when the kite phase begins, you can simply keep him in the kite phase, ignore the jailer and burn him down in this phase. If he's this low on health, it's pointless to transition him since you can easily kill him before he gets too fast. Pushing him into the next phase causes him to heal 8%. If he's above 12% and you don't think you can kill him in the kite phase, then deal with the jailer as normal. When you're ready, open the final cage and move to the blue marker here. At this point, we have everyone stack up and start chaining all remaining raid cooldowns. The idea is to let him push over back into the kite phase as quickly as possible. Personally, we don't move out with the fire since raid cooldowns are enough to deal with it at low stacks. If you struggle with it, you can have your raid strafe left or right every time fire spawns, moving the boss along with them. The main thing is to stay within 10 yards of each other so that the boss is transitioned safely without killing anyone. Once you've pushed him into the final kite phase, simply tank the jailer, have all DPS focus Thok, and kite the boss as normal until you kill him. Be sure to avoid the fire as you kite, and keep healers spread out so they can reach everyone in the raid. In general, this fight is about how well you manage your raid cooldowns, and how well your casters can cast in between roars. Every caster will need a stop casting macro like this, bound to an easy to reach key. Every time he starts to cast a roar, you press this macro and your cast is safely interrupted. You'll need to be paying close attention to his energy so you know in advance when the roar is incoming. So to sum up, split your raid evenly into two groups on these positions here. Start on the right and chain raid cooldowns as you DPS Thok up to 22 to 29 stacks of acceleration. Once you're ready to transition, move the two groups together, and plan your raid cooldowns effectively so you can cover the heavy damage of the higher stacks. In the kite phase, move your raid to the opposite side and have the first kite go to the opposite door. From then on, kite the boss in a straight line back and forth, with your raid on the opposite side. At around 12 stacks, open the cage and then stack up on the left side. Repeat the first stack phase, and when the bats spawn, pick them up and AoE. Take as many stacks as you can safely handle, then collapse and repeat the kite phase. Stack on the right for the third stack phase and take 22 to 29 stacks of acceleration again. Collapse the groups when you're done and want to transition. In the third kite phase, you can either kill the boss completely if he's low enough, or transition into the fourth stack phase and have everyone stack up on the blue marker. Use all remaining raid cooldowns and either stand still in the fire, or strafe to the right or left as it spawns, ensuring that you stay together until you transition into the final kite phase where you can kill him. Thank you very much for watching this guide, and if you have any comments or suggestions, please post them in the comment section below, and remember to rate, comment and subscribe.